All right, Andy, we are good to go.
Awesome. So let's talk about the post-secondary data partnership that I was asked to discuss with you guys today. This is one of our newer solutions at the National Student Clearinghouse. And this solution is a measure of student metrics in a form that allows for more users to be able to be data owners and to be able to take more ownership over the reports that they are needing to produce, or any type of data that people are asking for results upon. And I really, really like this tool. And so if I start sounding like a nerd as I'm talking about some of the things, there's a reason why, and I just wanted to let you know why that might be. So what is the what is this post-secondary data partnership? Really, truly what it is it's a way for institutions to take action with their data. And you're not waiting on someone out there to produce that data for you. You are able to grab it, see what's happening, and then see your results immediately. And so it really helps users to be able to identify their needs without having to necessarily go to institutional research or having to go to the registrar's office. Another thing that I truly like about the PDP is that we have a lot of third parties that we're going to talk about here in just a minute that are coming to us and saying, hey, your participating institutions, if they have PDP, we're no longer going to ask them for another data set. And so it really establishes a way for institutions to have a one-stop shop data set that third parties and people within the institution can go to be able to see what's happening with your student enrollment data. So who do we count with the PDP? Guess what? We count everyone. So when you submit your first files to us, you're not going to submit like iPads, a first time in college cohort. Sometimes, particularly for funding methods, you may just be giving the students that are actually going to be getting you funding. For the PDP, we're looking at everyone that is brand new to your institution that fall or spring semester. So you're going to submit those students to us, and that's every part of the student journey. And so we're going to ask for updates on those students at the end of each semester. And that's going to allow you to be able to have those PDP counts for every student, not just those first time in college. The other thing about being counted, that every student is being counted, is it allows you to see better those leading indicators on student success that allow you to predict the future. So the PDP is not just looking at lagging student indicators. It's looking at those indicators that are going to let you see what's going to happen with that group of students for the future. A lot of times the data that we are getting back are lagging indicators, meaning something happened in the past. It may have been several semesters ago. We saw, did the initiative work, did it not? But we're not really able to tell what's going to help us in the future. And that's what the PDP is for. So let's talk a little bit about the PDP and what it is. The PDP is Tableau dashboards, and we're going to look at some of those, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But they're interactive Tableau dashboards that you can utilize to get the data sets that you need. There's also going to be an analysis ready report, similar to what you see with Student Tracker, that allows you to have some capabilities to actually identify who is being impacted by what. And the PDP is benchmarking. So even though you're being able to do all of this disaggregation within the institution, guess what? You can see how you compare to your peers. So the more that institutions come along to the PDP, the more that we're going to see the benchmarking mechanism be even more powerful, because you're going to see what's happening not just within a select group of individuals, but you're also going to be able to benchmark yourself. If you wanted to benchmark against someone in Ohio that had the same student population as you could do something like that. And so you're going to have some flexibility in that benchmarking capability. Each of the items that you see here are a part of the PDP. The items in green, gateway, credit accumulation, credit completion, those are actually dashboards. The other items are going to be available filters within those dashboards. So how does it work? First and foremost, the setup is the hardest part of the PDP, in that we are going to ask you to get us 10 years worth of course and cohort files. So 10 years worth of data within those files, I should say. We're going to take those files, combine those with the degree and enrollment verification files that you currently send us now, and we're going to make the dashboards in the analysis ready file that's going to be available to you with all of that data. So what then turns around and allows you to do is those third parties that we're going to talk about here in just a second are going to see the same dashboards, have access to that same data that you submitted to us that you currently are going to have access to as well. So with the data submission, these are the additional data elements that we are going to ask each institution to send us on that cohort and course file. In many cases, you are collecting this data and you're sending it to the state. You're sending it to iPads. You're sending it to different individuals. So you have this data available in your SIS. It's pulling those submissions together. For those of you that may be a Lucian Cloud, that you subscribe to the Lucian Cloud and you are cloud-based, there is a data submission file that comes with your baseline banner, or a colleague, if you have that cloud-based hosting, that will pull these files for you. So we're going to get these 10 years worth of data. We're going to combine it. And then what we're going to give you is the dashboards. So I continue to talk about the partnerships. Here is just a snippet of who has signed on with the National Student Clearinghouse to be able to utilize the PDP as their data sources. And so what I mean by that is Complete College America, they're not going to ask you for another data set. They're going to say, hey, they are a PDP participant. I need access to their dashboard. You give them access, and then they're going to utilize those dashboards to be able to pull the data that they need to satisfy whatever grant opportunity, initiative that you're participating in. You're not having to pull another data set. In many cases, there are schools that they have just a division of their institutional research that is puts all of their time in for things like Achieving the Dream in a Complete College America. This can help eliminate some of that and create some data efficiencies within the institution. So let's talk a little bit about these interactive dashboards. What you see here are the filters that you can use to be able to filter against to get the data set that you're looking for. And so if you're wanting to see students by race, if you're wanting to see students by gender, how are they performing? Those types of filters are going to be available to you to be able to really take those filters and drill down into the data to see what's happening and what actions are being taken place. So here is an example of one of those dashboards. This is the first year enrollment dashboard. As you can see, it is a cohort model. So what we are seeing here is the 2019-2020 cohort, the total enrollment of that cohort, and then we're seeing a breakdown of their attendance type. Were they first time? Were they a transfer student? Then the other thing that we're seeing is what's happening within these age groups. So what does our enrollment look like by age group? You could take this and drill this down even more. Let's say that you wanted to see what race and ethnicities are enrolling at your institution. How many credits are they taking? What do they look like? Are they coming in as new students? Are they coming in as transfer students? So you can and just basically manipulate the filters to get the data that you're seeking. Here's one of the dashboards that I really like. It's the first year credit completion ratio. We are constantly asked by boards, by outside agencies, how many credits are students completing? How well are they doing? So if a student takes 15 hours, are we getting them out of college faster? Or are we seeing that maybe 15 hours is too much at our institution? And so this gives you an idea of what that looks like at your institution. What you're seeing in this dashboard here is all of the filters are on. So we are looking at the entire population of students that came into the fall of 2018. And what did their credit completion ratio really look like? When you get into the dashboards, as you hover over any of the graphs that you see displayed here, you're going to get a little data box. Within that data box, it's going to give you that brief summary count that the visualization is actually showing you. So here what we're seeing is with our credit completions, we had a really great credit completion in 2016, 2017. Okay, what did we do? Why do we think that that's the case? Because we're not seeing that again. So what happened here that we need to replicate to see if we can increase the credit ratios? And that's what the PDP is designed to do, is give you a visual without having to ask somebody to pull all of this data for you, and then you have to figure out the visual on your own. In this particular dashboard, we looked at first year credit completion again. However, we want to see what's happening with our Pell Grant recipients. So what we're seeing here is we've got Pell Grant recipients that are looking pretty good. They're getting credits completed a little faster than some of our other non-Pell Grant recipients. And we saw this very quickly in the dashboards. Once again, I want to point out, you have the data boxes that give you a little more information. So if you need a quick, here's down and dirty what is happening, hover over that graph, and there you have it. You have the data that you're looking for. As you can tell, all of these filters and dashboards are developed around key performance indicators. And I know you've seen that on several of the graphs that I've already displayed. But we really built this to be able to, at first glance, see what's happening with those KPIs. And so I do want to point that out when we're talking about the dashboards. Now, this is an interesting dashboard in how we group this together and what we are seeing. So we took this dashboard and we're looking at our traditional age freshmen. So students that are coming in under the age of 20. We're looking at multiple races. So we pulled white, Hispanic, and Black students. But we also want to see, are they Pell Grant recipients? So this graph is showing us our Pell Grant recipients. At very first glance, you can see you have an equity gap. This dashboard is showing you an equity gap. There's no in, buts, bouts, or anything about it. You see that the white students are completing more credits than the Hispanic and Black students. When you look at this, you can immediately see, hey, we have an issue. How are we going to address this? Do we have a certain semester where our students were, here we are seeing a small increase in our Black students. So what initiatives did we put into place that are helping with this credit completion ratio? And that's the type of data that you're wanting to utilize the PDP to see. Take out the part where you're having to pull data and all the time commitment that it takes to pulling all of that data to be able to really drill down into the data and tell the story. This is just another dashboard that we have, and it's called the Subgroup Gap analysis. And so what it is it's a way for you to have a very quick glance to see the gaps. And in many cases, we have board members and different members of people that are giving us funding, grant holders that are going to want these type of visualizations. And so you can easily pull these and export it so that you can use these for any of those reports that you're needing. This subgroup analysis is the same group that we saw prior to this dashboard, with one little exception. We are looking at the attendance, and meaning what we mean by attendance is that are they full-time, part-time, that's the attendance mechanism. And so we're wanting to see what's happening between our Hispanic and our white students and what type of gap may exist between those students. Gateway course completion. So this is another one of the dashboards. As Kyle mentioned, I am a former Texas registrar. Gateway courses, while I was registrar, was huge. We were reporting on gateway courses consistently. And we had a tendency to have to pull gateway course reports for these students in completely different formats and different models. And so with the PDP, this will let you be able to have that one single source of the data. Excuse me, guys, we got out. If you've ever been to Texas in October, you know that everything is high and allergies are awful. So here in the gateway course completion, what you're seeing is you're seeing that we have filtered by our traditional freshman age. We're looking at our Hispanic students, multiple genders, but we're also looking that they are Pell recipients. So how are they performing in the gateway courses? What we see here is that between 2014 and 2018, there's a big jump in performance. So what did we do as an institution that helped with this increase, and how can we take that to that next step to continue to increase the performance in the gateway courses? I want to talk a little bit about the benchmarking. So we've seen all of our dashboards, we've seen the capabilities of those dashboards, but let's talk about benchmarking. As an institutional researcher or a registrar, one of the things that the board and your senior leadership are constantly asking you is, how well are we doing against XYZ institution? What do we look like with the institutions across the state? What do we look like compared to other two-year institutions? This is what the benchmarking will allow you to do. The benchmarking takes all of those filters that you saw in the other reports, and then it allows you to decide how you want to compare and to whom do you want to compare to. And yes, you can see who you're comparing to. You're not going to know their data, but you're going to be able to see it. And so here we are going to benchmark as a state benchmarking against North Carolina, all four-year institutions in North Carolina, and all public. So all public and private. So if you wanted to filter down by private institution, by Carnegie status, if you just wanted to look at the entire state, so even how we compare against two-year and four-year, you have that flexibility to be able to do that. So when we look at this chart, this is our retention and persistence. What we're seeing here is, as an institution, we started out a little lower than most institutions. We took a climb, we took a dip, we took another climb, and now we're taking another dip. What we can then do is take each subgroup that we see here, take that back to that analysis ready file and see who those students were. So what did we do here with those students that made us go above everyone else? What's happening here that we then can apply now to be able to increase the retention at the institution? When the National Student Clearinghouse talks about retention and persistence, retention is what's happening at your institution. Persistence is what's happening with that student across institutions, meaning did the student stay enrolled continuously? So that's what we're looking at here. We also will see, if you come down to the students retained and persisted but not enrolled. So what we're seeing here is we're doing pretty good on our persistence, but why do we have 49% of these students that are retained, but 51% have left? So how can we reverse that? And visually, you can see that the second that you open the dashboards. So here is the newest release for the PDP. And for those of you, if you've ever seen a PDP presentation, you may have not seen these visualizations yet. It's our financial aid dashboards. But I want to say a few things before we talk about them. The first thing I do want to mention is when you give access to the PDP, you have to give additional access to the financial aid dashboards. I know financial aid is very sensitive and there's a lot of confidentiality involved. And so institutions can choose to give access to the other dashboards, but not the financial aid dashboards. These are optional dashboards. So you as an institution do get to decide if you would like to give us the financial aid data that goes along with that enrollment data. But it is there and it is available, and it is pretty slick in the amount of information that you can get back based on what's happening with those students in financial aid. And when I talk about financial aid, we're not just talking about students that receive federal funding. You're also going to submit to us scholarship students. So students that are getting additional funding that you have within your student information system. So when you look at the dashboards look a little different in the financial aid world. The first one that we're seeing are students with unmet need. And I know in Oklahoma, there's a big initiative on finding out students that are not getting all of the aid that they need to continue with enrollment. And so these visualizations are going to allow you to see what is really happening with your financial aid data. So as you can see here, we've got students, we've got about 22% of our students that are not getting the aid that they need. They're in this income bracket. And so what can we do then? Is there a scholarship? Is there a grant? COVID has brought about to many institutions some additional funding that they weren't expecting. For example, I have a kiddo here in Texas that's a dual credit student, and we got a $400 scholarship, which never happens with dual credit. But the institution was able to receive grant money and was able to apply that to the students based on their need. And so what would happen with these dashboards is you could pull them up and say, hey, we've got $25,000 that we need to get rid of. Who can we give it to? Pull up the financial aid dashboard and go, oh, look, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing this. Look at this trend. If we give it to these students, then we may get more completers. Go to that analysis ready file, figure out who they were, and let's give them a scholarship. Let's award that money to them. There are multiple filters that you see here that are very similar to the filters that you provide in the cohort and course file, with the exception of you're going to be sending us the income and the dependency that, of course, are not available as a part of enrollment reporting in the other files. And this is why there's so much security built around the financial aid dashboards. So let's talk about who's participating and what's happening with this participation. And then we've talked about the PDP. I want to hear some from you guys. If I don't hear a whole lot from you or questions, I do want to talk a little bit about just some use cases and how other institutions are utilizing the PDP. So we've got 588 institutions across the United States that are participating, meaning that we have data in there for 5.8 million students. So the more institutions that participate, the better the benchmarking is going to be for everyone that participates in the PDP. We are looking right now at only post-secondary undergraduate students, with the hope that we're going to be able to bring in graduate students at a later date. The other thing that I want to say about when you see this PDP participation, we are seeing more and more enhancements on our roadmap because the institutions are participating. This is not going to be a static solution at the Clearinghouse. We want to provide a solution that's going to be of benefit to the institution. So for example, dual enrollment right now is not a good reflection in the PDP. You want to see what's going on with your high school, college students. And so we are building more filters to be able to add those to the PDP so that if you just want to look at all of your dual enrollment students, you can look at all of your dual enrollment students. So those types of enhancements are what we are hearing from our institutions that they need. And these aren't institutions that participate in advisory boards. These are institutions that are using it and telling us what they're seeing. Just a little quote to kind of talk about, better use of your data. As a former registrar dean of enrollment, I would say 25% of my fall semester was spent reporting, pulling data, doing board reports, those types of things, where if I would have had one tool where I could have pulled whoever needed, then then that would have given me back 25% of my fall semester. But not only that, it's a single source. So it's coming from the same source. Therefore, everyone across is expecting the same look, the same data, and they have that expectation of what they're going to get, which will help with interpretation of data. You know, people will take that and they'll want to interpret it in their way because we gave them raw data. Well, here we actually have already done the interpretation for them. This is what's happening. So, and we've talked about these benefits. So let's talk a little bit about, and I talked about the analysis ready file. I'm not going to go a whole lot into this because if you have utilized Student Tracker, the analysis ready file is something that you are used to and you've seen those files. One of the enhancements that has been rolled out in the last month is we also have a student insight dashboard that institutions can participate in. Basically, it takes 6 of those dashboards and we refine it. So there's some refinement that happens to those dashboards, and you can put that on your public facing website. And so it gives the public, it gives board members, it gives people that are wanting to give funding to the school, but they're wanting to see how the school's doing. It gives them some access to some public data that they may not currently have access to, and they may have to have an open records report for, but there is refinement to that data. So let's talk some use cases. But before I talk use cases, I'm going to stop here and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, silence tells me no. So I want to talk a little bit about use cases, things that we have seen that institutions have utilized the PDP for, some of the experiences that I've had. And then once again, I'm going to ask for questions, and I know it's Friday afternoon, believe me, I know it's Friday afternoon. So guided pathways in achieving the dream. Many of you guys that are community colleges know that guided pathways has become a part of our lives. Achieving the dream has become a part of many institutions. We rely on the data that we give for those initiatives to determine how successful our students are. One of the grueling things about achieving the dream is the data submission that you have to do annually to continue your participation. If you are an ATD school and you have the PDP, you no longer have to do that data submission. Your Achieving the Dream coach and your mentors are going to use the PDP to see what's going on. So let's say that you put in an initiative for Achieving the Dream for your Gateway Math students, and you have a new tutorial lab, or you have some new online labs that you're doing with these students, and you need to prove to ATD, not only did you put it into place, but how well are those students doing? Well, guess what? That's what the PDP will do for you. They can pull that on their own. You're not having to submit those rosters and that data and all that stuff. They will be able to do that if you allow them to. Same thing with guided pathways. Let's say that you've decided that you have this singular program that you're going to focus on within guided pathways. So you're going to work on your technical students this semester with some guided pathways and with those courses, but you need to see how well they're doing. Well, you're going to be able to pull that data from the PDP and not have to utilize institutional research to write you a new report. Success funding. So if you're looking not only for success funding, but for grant funding, and you want to predict what's going to happen with your success funding. That's what is cool about this, is it's not just, hey, this is what happened, this is why we got that success funding, here is that group of students. But now, since we're looking at just one semester behind data, because you're going to give us new data at the end of each term, you're going to be able to predict what success funding is coming to you, or if there's grant funding, what that grant funding is going to be, without having to wait continuously when it's time to submit. We already talked about the financial need. that, to me, that's a big one in many cases, particularly right now in 2020 and 2021. Like I said, you're getting some money that you've never had before, and you're having to determine who to give it to. This is a great way to be able to do that. With the PDP, so remember we talked about the analysis ready file. And if you've utilized Student Tracker, you know that you can submit a file to us. And I want to talk about Student Tracker right now a little bit. So with Student Tracker, you get to submit a file to the Clearinghouse. And we're going to come back to you and we're going to tell you that subsequent enrollment. Or we're going to tell you where they went when we declined admissions. So Student Tracker is going to complement PDP in a way that you've got that quick data set that tells you where the students are going if they didn't come to you, where are they transferring to if they didn't complete. But guess what? Then you can take that and you can go look in the PDP and you can see, okay, well, those students weren't as successful here as we're seeing now when they transferred. They are continuing enrollment, but they weren't as successful here. So maybe that's a reason they left us. What could we do to help keep those students here and keep completers at our institution? And then enrollment management. We always are asked to target those students that are going to be successful at our institution. Well, who are those students? Who are those students that are going to be successful at our institutions? What do they look like? We can determine that utilizing the dashboards. And then we can do some targeted admissions and do some targeted recruiting to be able to bring those students in. But then on the flip side, who are those students that we get every term and they're not being successful? How do we help those students be successful and turn those students into completers? Well, we can use those dashboards to see what those students look like. What are their demographics? What kind of courses are they enrolling in? Where can we put in those student success initiatives to help those students that we get every semester, and maybe we need to give them a little more intervention to get them through and to see completers here at the institution? And then finally, what initiatives are we applying to our student body that are actually working? I know sometimes we get initiative fatigue. It's like it feels like we've got this one coming and this one coming and this one coming, and we've got so much stuff going on. We don't have a clue which one's working. We know something's working, but what is it? Because we have that initiative fatigue. And so you can utilize this to see that group of students that you were targeting with those initiatives, how well are they doing and what's working when there's so much going on. And so there's just some examples of use cases. We heard from the University of Hawaii recently that they had 3 different offices that were doing some type of institutional research work. And when they adopted the PDP, within the first 6 months, 2 of those areas were able to focus on something else other than that consistent reactive data needs of the institution. And so it created some efficiencies at the University of Hawaii that they weren't experiencing without the dashboards. And so I'm going to stop here. I've been talking for almost 40 minutes. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, if there aren't any questions, remember I'm your regional relationship manager. If you have any questions about enrollment reporting, degree reporting, whatever it is, there's my email. Please feel free to contact me. There's some more information about the PDP if you'd like to go dig out some information and kind of look at it. There's a lot of tutorials out there, and there's many videos that will help with this. And so if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and I will be more than happy to help. And I'm done for the day, so y'all can go about your Friday and have your business meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Andi, for the wonderful presentation. Everyone, I am putting the session survey in the link now. It's the same survey, so just make sure we're filling it out for each session. I will also put it in the main rooms chat as well, just as people are exiting this. The business meeting will start in 20 minutes, so we do ask that everyone stay for that if they can. last year we had a lot of people who left right before that. So we just want to make sure